Okay, and so welcome to today's version of Nuts and Bolts and Trustee Training for Helpers. This is for what happens when a client dies. And this is the first of actually 3 Nuts and Bolts Trustee Training sessions this year, and I'll go into the schedule in a few minutes. So that everybody understands, the screen is, I'm not running the PowerPoint in full screen mode so that I can see what's coming, and so you know that there's not a mistake there. I haven't forgotten. It's just important that I be able to see what our next slide is so that I can go along that way. So this is the first session of our family education program, and this is somebody just came on.
Yeah, that's Stan Fleischman and Jackie.
Hi, Stan.
Hi, sorry we're a little late.
That's all right. Welcome. We just got started. Just go to the attendees list and mute yourself so that there's no feedback during the presentation. Okay?
Could you please remind, do I do anything to get video?
Well, you should be able to see the screen now if you're looking on the computer.
I am.
And if what you should be seeing is a slide called Family Education Program.
I don't want to take your time, but I don't see anything. But
all right. Well, this will be recorded, so you'll be able to get it online eventually anyway. I don't see you on the. I don't see you on.
We're not getting it either, Frank.
Who's we?
You just unmuted us, so I could tell you that. No.
Mari and Andrea, you're not getting it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe we got.
What's it say? Heritage Design Group? Is that what you have?
Yeah,
up on there?
it says Heritage Design Law Group Family Education Program. It's a slide.
Yeah,
Okay,
we got it now.
We'll remute ourselves.
Okay.
okay.
All right, I'm going to continue on.
Okay, go ahead. I'll mute it.
All right. So there's really 2 elements to today's program. One is Nuts and Bolts for Clients. That's the traditional program that we have. And the other is Trustee Training for Helpers, which we sort of added on last year. And we really completely revised our Nuts and Bolts and Trustee Training last year so that it's if you haven't seen it before, you'll see some completely new content this year. So let's talk about the Nuts and Bolts program. Typically, what are the client's goals for the Nuts and Bolts program? Well, when clients come in and they do their planning with us, usually their first goal is that they want to make things go smoother and easier for the people that follow them. Clients have lots of other goals, but one of the major goals that people have is that they want things to go smoothly for the people that they leave behind. So that is the major goal for the Nuts and Bolts program for most of our clients. We have some goals too for the clients. Essentially, we're trying to familiarize you with the settlement process so that you can have some peace of mind about there is a process and how it works. We want to reinforce your current commitments and to set your proper expectations about what to expect if you're a survivor. And we also want to give you some information that will help you evaluate the people that you have already selected or that you're thinking of selecting as helpers going forward. You know, it's really important for people to understand the settlement process so that they have a better, vision of the impact of their planning and how it actually operates, because that helps people. If you begin with the end in mind, that often helps people make good judgments and decisions. And so, we're happy to discuss any changes that people want based on what they hear today. And we also want to discuss the concrete steps that you as clients can take to make the process better and easier for your loved ones. So for the helpers, our helpers have lots of different goals. We're very happy to hear what they are. Please send us a private email. My email is fbridges@hdlawgroup.com. You can register for our email notices on the website so that you get into our database with your email and your telephone number. And of course, by attending this class and the other classes as well, you are now qualified for what we call a First Call program. First Call means that you're welcome to call us up anytime that you want to ask us questions about the planning that our clients have done, so that you have a complete understanding about what could happen and how things might go in terms of estate settlement, either for disability or for death. And as part of that, we certainly want you to let us know what's working for you and what questions you have and what might not be working for you. And so what we want to do is to familiarize you with the settlement process. It's important for you to have confidence in the process, because if you don't have confidence in the process, it's going to be much more difficult for you to actually follow along. And it makes things much less smooth in terms of estate settlement. And we want to explain the commitments that we have to the settlement process and that the clients are making to the settlement process to set proper expectations for you. And finally, we want to prepare you for the issues that you'll be facing as time goes by. You know, what happens when somebody actually dies is, and you're a person that they leave behind, is that your life, if they're close to you, your life changes in an instant. Everything is different. And so it's important for you to understand that, you know, you're going to go through a grieving process, and there are multiple stages of that, and all of that mixes in together to make your life completely different. And so we want to make sure that you understand some of the issues and challenges that you're likely to face going forward if someone does die. And, you know, we also want to provide an overview of the tasks that we're going to be performing together, and let you know how you can help our client prepare better for the process and help you prepare for the process. So for our clients, there are several proactive lifetime steps that you can do to help things go smoothly for the people that you leave behind. Of course, the first is, and this is the most important, this is the primary key to a successful estate plan, and that is to make sure that your trust is fully funded. Right now we're in the period during our calendar year when people are submitting their updated funding reports, which you'll have in your Blue Book. Everybody should be submitting that this year. We want to have those updates. And when we have our annual client meetings in June, you'll receive the updated report for your Blue Book, so that you'll have what our records show as to how your assets are actually titled. All right, so if you don't actually title your property in your trust, or make your trust the beneficiary of the things that are appropriate, and don't fund your property, your trust correctly, then your estate plan is not going to work, and that's one of the biggest and most important things that people can do. Another thing is to make sure that you communicate the steps that you're going to learn today to the people that are your helpers, so that they know what to do. You know, one of the keys to a proper estate planning is to make sure that people know what to do, how to do it, and actually how to pay for it when estate settlement actually occurs. And so we want to make sure that people communicate, our clients communicate those what to do steps now, so that there's no mystery as time goes by if something does happen. In your red books, there is a location list that has, it's on the yellow type of paper. It has a complete table of where all of the important papers and other kinds of things will be, so that if somebody does need to start doing estate settlement, they'll be able to go to your red book, look at the location list, and know where everything is. And among those things, one of the most important things to remember is to make sure that you have a list of your passwords somewhere that's very safe. I know what I do is that I use a program called Keeper, which is as secure as I know that I can get. Always looking for something that's more secure, but it has all of my passwords in it, and I've given the key to that Keeper to my lovely wife, Carol, so that she knows how to get access to all the passwords that I have. And I've also shared all of that stuff that's for the business purposes with Alicia Sweeney, so that she knows the passwords for everything that operates our office. So, and then of course there is a memorandum inside your Red Book about what kind of instructions you want to have for your funeral. You know, instructions, if you give your instructions to the funeral director, they become binding on the family and they have to be followed. But, you know, most people will follow people's instructions, and it's important that you have those somewhere where people can actually see them, because, you know, the funeral actually is going to occur many days often before people actually get started with estate settlement. So those final instructions for what you want to have happen in terms of your funeral should be in your Red Book so that they're easily found. If you have some instructions that you'd like us to prepare for you, we're happy to word process those, and we can get them prepared for you and put them into your book. Some more steps are very important. One is, you know, we have found in funding that people who do come to us often have multiple brokerage accounts, particularly investment brokerage accounts. They'll have multiple bank accounts and that kind of thing as well. And what we try to do is to get them to consolidate those into one account, because it can get extremely confusing for people to have more than one brokerage account during the estate settlement process. And that makes it more complicated for everybody. So see if you can consolidate your investments into one brokerage account so that it's easier for people to understand. Or two brokerage accounts if you want to keep those separate, and your husband and wife. Usually people will have at least one brokerage account for their retirement accounts and a brokerage account for their after-tax or taxable assets. One other thing is to make sure that there's not a lot of clutter. Everybody knows that you can go up into the attic and see lots of clutter, and that's something that someone is going to have to deal with sooner or later. So one of my projects during my lifetime is to make sure that I can reduce the clutter in my attic, and I think everybody else should too. So let's attack that. Make sure that what's around for people to deal with is stuff that's really important. And speaking of stuff, there is special stuff. These are the things that are important to you and your family. For me, it's my guitar, for example. And to make a list of that stuff and indicate who it is that you want to have it. In your Red Books, we've provided you with something called a TPP memo. It stands for Tangible Personal Property. And there are at least 10 in there so that you can fill those out. And for individual pieces of special stuff, you can say who you want them to have it, who you want to have it. One other really important thing is to make sure that we have the contact information for your beneficiaries and helpers at all times. Make sure that it's all up to date. I have found that, you know, people change jobs, and when we send out emails, they sometimes bounce back, and it's very difficult for us to get new information. So be sure to make sure that everybody's helper and beneficiary information is up to date, because we're going to need to get in touch with those people as time goes by. And then, of course, the most important thing is to get the helpers and beneficiaries to attend proactive training. And there's trustee and beneficiary training, and we're putting together a process to, as part of our program, probably next year, to have people understand what the process of grieving is, and kinds of programs like that we'd like to provide to our trustees and beneficiaries so that they understand a little bit more about what happens and what kinds of emotional concerns that they're going to go through when their life changes that way. So for the trustees, there are 4 principal goals. We want you to make sure that you know the law firm name and have our contact information, and make sure that you remember that there is a process, which we'll be talking about today, and it's the process that produces the results. So it's important to follow it. We want to give you an idea of the types of issues that you'll be dealing with, and we want to encourage your interest in participation in our clients' planning. So here's the settlement process overview. There are a number of different, I'm just going to, as a side note, I'm going to say that you're going to see a lot of TMs in the names of various different types of documents in our program. And the reason for that is that we are part of a larger network of members around the country who all practice very much the same way, and we share the same intellectual property materials that's helpful for clients to understand what's going to happen. So when you see the word, the indication TM, that's because we're trying to protect the intellectual property of the National Network of Estate Planning Attorneys, of which we're members. So one of the things is the smooth transfer template. So I'm going to see if I can bring that up. Here we go. The smooth transfer template, it's important to understand that, you know, everybody has a job during the estate settlement process. Clients have jobs during their lifetime. Helpers and beneficiaries have jobs. So it's important to communicate. Clients and beneficiaries both, ensure that there's proper funding. Support the funding process. If you're a helper or beneficiary, make sure that the person who is our client is involved in making sure that their funding is getting done correctly. Attend the annual client meetings that will be this year in June. The CUP program, or Client Update Program, occurs in the fall. That's when we update the client's documents every other year. We have some clients in the even years and some clients in the odd years, and so our program for that occurs in the fall. And our helpers and beneficiaries are welcome to attend at the invitation of our clients. And then there's the Heritage Design Learning System, and that's HDLS. And so our solution to a lot of these questions in terms of how people are going to understand what happens is to make sure that they attend the Heritage Design Learning Solution. Both the clients and the beneficiaries should do that by attending the nuts and bolts, attend the trustee training, and pursue wealth reception planning. Wealth reception planning is planning for the people who will be receiving the wealth, and with them in mind, so that they have an understanding of what their role in the estate settlement process is, and subsequently, and make sure that everyone communicates. And then there's the transfer process. So we have something called the Transfer Process Navigator, and there's two of them. One is for a taxable estate, and it looks like this. And so you can see that there's a process. When someone dies, there's a notification, and what we want to make sure is that everybody stops at that point, doesn't precipitously go start doing things. I'll show you a Common Concerns Memorandum, which you can download from our website. That's the first thing that people always ask, like, okay, should I close accounts? What should I do? And the answer to that is generally don't do anything until you come to the settlement counseling session. I'll talk about what happens in that in a couple of minutes. And then once the initial settlement counseling session begins or has taken place, we go through a valuation progress or valuation process. It might take 2 or 3 weeks, or it might take 6 to 9 weeks or more, depending on the circumstances, so that we're going to value the assets, we're going to make sure we know all of the assets, and during that period of time we're going to have a telephone conference reporting system. Once every few weeks we get together to make sure that everybody's on the same page and we're making progress in making sure that everything is valued and reported correctly. And then after that process is done, we have a transition strategy meeting. This is designed essentially to say, okay, how are we going to fund assets? Where are they going to go? How are we going to pay the estate taxes if they're due? What's our process? How are we going to value things? How are we going to report things for the estate taxes? The filing forum is the filing of the estate tax return. Once that is done, we set up a long-term trust meeting so that we're going to get a final return, a final letter from the IRS and from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts saying that they've accepted our reporting and that the tax estate is closed. And once that is done, we can start funding the long-term trusts that are established by the instructions of our clients. And at that point, what we'll typically have is an administrative support team meeting. So once those trusts are established, we can explain how we can support the trustees going forward for that. Then there's the settlement commitment clarifier, and let me see if I can find that. That is right here. This is in draft form, so that you'll see that in every particular instance it can change. But it's important for the trustees to understand what their what their expectations should be. What are the reasonable expectations about the process? Respect the common concerns memo. Everybody should be able to download that and read it, review it when they have the chance, when they can. Honor the settlement productivity plan. In every case, we put together a plan about how we're going to go through that process. That includes those telephone calls that I mentioned. So make sure that you understand how that's going to work and that you actually follow it. If there's mail that comes in at the decedent's house, make sure that you forward the mail. Go to the post office. Make sure that any mail that's going, if the decedent lived alone, make sure that their mail is forwarded to the appropriate place. When we have our initial meeting, we'll be determining where that should go. Make sure that you return all the signatures that we send you, because sometimes we'll send you documents for signature in connection with the valuation and reporting. Make sure that you send those back immediately. Try not to go direct unless we actually discuss how that's going to happen to institutions, investment houses, etc., because it's much easier when there's one voice dealing with the transition process, and that's typically us in terms of getting valuations and doing funding for successor trustees. And when we have a call or when we have a discussion, always agree on what the next step after the contact is going to be. And of course, our job is to make sure that we live up to the same expectations and that we make sure that we have the next step established when we're moving forward. So, and then I explained that the settlement coordination plan is one thing that we're going to put together when we actually meet for our initial settlement conference. So, what happens? What's the first thing that someone should do if the client has died? The first thing to do is to call the office so that you can ask any questions and receive the initial guidance. Please talk to me or speak to Alicia so that we can begin the process. And then as we go along, follow the Heritage Design Transfer Process Navigator from there. So how does that work? There is the first settlement counseling session. So what we're going to be dealing with that and preparing for that, you should review the Common Concerns memo. And then when you get to the session, there'll be full trust settlement instructions that we provide at that session. And then there's another document about what to do when a loved one passes. So in order for you to understand where you can get that information, I'm going to make a little side trip now and go to our website. So here's our website, which has been completely redone recently, and on the lower right hand corner you're going to see a button that says Client Sign In. So you click that button and you go to the to what is going to be the sign-in for the Step 2 Resource Center. So the username for everybody is Step 2, and the password is member with an initial cap. So notice that there's a capital S on Step 2 with a space between Step and 2, and that the password is capital M-E-M-B-E-R. And hopefully this will play with me today. So once you sign in, and just give us a second for it to do, once you sign in, you'll come to this page here. So this page is our resource center. We're building it. There's lots of new things that we're going to be putting up. We've added some things this year. And there's a lot of documents that you can download. Among those are, what to do in a level 1 passes. So if you click on this, it's either going to download as a PDF on your computer, or it's going to go into another window. I've got my browser set so that it downloads as a PDF. And when you do that, you can open that up. So that's what that document looks like. So when a loved one passes away, this is one of the things that you need to understand. Call the law firm immediately, know where the Red Book is, take a look at it, arrange for care of any pets, secure the house, schedule a settlement counseling session, make a list of questions that you've got, and read and follow the correspondence you receive from us. There are lots of things not to do. Don't close bank accounts, don't endorse checks, don't drive the decedent's car because it's not clear that it's insured until we can make sure that it is. Don't remove any household furnishings. Don't pay any bills. Don't use any of the decedent's credit cards. Don't contact life insurance companies or banks or investment institutions. Don't use any powers of attorney because powers of attorneys actually expire when someone dies. Whether it's a durable one or not, if you're the agent under a power of attorney and the person that appointed you dies, your agency is over. So that's how to get to that. So that's what to do when someone dies. Then there's the Common Concerns Memorandum. That's here too. That's right here. And that's very helpful. Has a lot of interesting information in it. What should I, is there anything I need to do immediately? How many death certificates should I get? There's lots of key questions that people ask. How do I pay funeral expenses? Those are all there for download on the website. You can download those anytime and read them anytime you want to. So at the settlement counseling session, here's what happens. We go over the navigator. And if it's a taxable estate, we use one navigator. If it's a non-taxable estate, we use another. And we go over the navigator so that everybody understands what the process is, and then start figuring out what the dates will be for the various different sessions. Many times we can't determine that right up front, but at least people understand what is coming ahead of before them. Review of the commitments in the settlement coordination plan. We'll review the various different commitments that we're asking people to make, and we'll start building a to-do list as we go. All right. So, and one other thing that we often do is we review the estate plan or design template. And I'm going to show you a sort of an abbreviated version of what that's about in a couple of minutes, so that people understand what the actual structure of the trust of the decedent looks like, so it understands what our goal is in terms of making sure that the instructions are followed. We'll also be discussing, if there are any cash flow questions, how we're going to address those. That's usually the first thing in people's mind. I had a joint account, can I use it? Or my spouse was paying the bills, what about paying the bills now? How does that work? We want to make sure that we're verifying what the assets are. Hopefully we have an updated asset detail report from the last year when it was updated during the Step 2 program. And we want to go through that and start deciding who's going to get what information and how that's going to work. We usually obtain some signatures on affidavits, for example, and authorizations to get information from financial institutions. There will be a service agreement that we will sign and go over, and we'll begin our we'll schedule our first valuation telephone conference. So during that transfer process, this is the next step. We're going to be putting together the estate inventory report, and we'll be obtaining asset valuations and establishing transition talk decisions for that meeting. We'll be providing funding transfer support during the process and asset review reports to make sure that all of that happens. And then once the process is finished, we're going to have a red check review to make sure that everything that was a to-do is completed, and that's when the settlement process is really finished. And that's when the successor trust begins, and that's when the administrative support for the successor trustees by us begins as well. So typically what does the estate a trust look like? So let's say that we have a married couple and the first spouse dies. So both spouses have a revocable living trust, that's RLT, and the first thing that happens is that we establish an administrative trust for the decedent's revocable living trust. It's very much like establishing an estate, but of course it's inside the trust. We don't have to go to probate to do that, provided that everything is appropriately funded. So the decedent's revocable living trust becomes an administrative trust automatically. We have to get a tax ID number. The successor trustees take over some of the paperwork that we provide or that we're talking about at the initial settlement conference. It has to do with the successor trustees taking over and accepting their trusteeship. And so the administrative trust is what it is what's in effect while we're following that whole navigation process. And once we're finished with that process, then we're going to be establishing a family trust and a marital trust for the survivors of the deceased client. So typically the family trust has children or other people as well as a surviving spouse, and this marital trust has only the surviving spouse as the beneficiary. Sometimes if it's not a taxable estate, we might not be funding the marital trust. We might only fund the family trust because the purpose of the family trust is to make sure that we don't pay a taxable estate, so we use up any credit, estate tax credit that's involved in the estate in the family trust, so hopefully we don't have a taxable estate. But if we have more than that, then we have to have a marital trust so we get the marital deduction. And then once the second spouse dies, again, we have an administrative trust for the second spouse, and at that time the marital trust and the family trust for the first spouse is in existence, and then we start establishing the settlement of the trust for the beneficiaries. Usually our clients have trusts, either lifetime or outright distributions for beneficiaries, and those trusts are irrevocable if they're lifetime trusts, so we establish those. So the surviving spouse is going to have, typically will have beneficiary trusts. The first spouse is going to have beneficiary trusts, and then once we have everything settled and we have a closing letter from IRS and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, then we tend to merge those. So we don't end up with 6 trusts, we end up with 3 in this example where there were 3 children. So that's the objective. And then if we have a single individual, we have the deceased client's revocable living trust. Again, we do the administrative trust for the client and do the estate settlement during the navigation process, the transfer and valuation process. And then once that's completed, we establish the beneficiaries' trusts and proceed for there. When we establish those trusts, that's when the administrative support process begins for those trusts. So another set of things that happens during that transfer and valuation process, we want to, towards the end of it, is that we're going to prune the red book to make sure that it's up to date for the trustees. We're going to go over how we're going to support the successor trustees. And remember, the successor trustees don't have to hire us, but they can be in our Step 2 program. There is a regular fee for our successor trustees once those trusts are done so that we can support them just like we support the revocable living trusts of our clients during the lifetimes of our clients. Sometimes it's important for those trusts, and there are certain ways to be able to update them. And many trustees have questions about distributions and terms of the trust and how things go, and investments and what's supposed to happen. What kind of access are we going to have for those to those trusts? And then, of course, when the survivors, the surviving spouse in particular, we're going to be talking about strategic financial planning because they're going to be in a completely different situation now. They have their revocable living trust, and we have to make sure that their financial well-being continues as anticipated by the decedent. So let me talk about some final thoughts. when we're doing the estate settlement, it's important for people to understand that there are a lot of different counseling issues that we go through when we're preparing clients. And let me just show you that on the website you can actually download a lot of those things from the website. There's a summary of all the stories and key concepts. All right, so you can download that from the website, and if you do, you can open it up, and so all of the stories are listed here. You can download it, print it, whatever you want to do, so that you understand a number of the various different key concepts in the planning that we've done, and why people have made the decisions that they typically make. The DOS analysis for beneficiaries, DOS is a strategic coach term, and it stands for dangers, opportunities, and strengths. And so one of those things that we go over with beneficiaries is right here under estate settlement on the website, and allow me to turn that. So, you know, our beneficiaries are going to be facing a number of dangers. They have a number of opportunities, and there are a number of strengths that are in position. So one of the dangers for beneficiaries and helpers is a lack of advanced preparation, and that results in poor expectations and a lack of understanding of what the actual settlement work is going to be. Many people have what we call the magic book mentality, which means, oh, okay, they have their red book, they have their estate plan, what has to be done? Nothing should have to be done, it's all taken care of. Well, we know that's not true. Red books don't settle estates, red books don't carry out instructions, it's the people and their actions that's important, and so that's what we're trying to coordinate and making sure that the people are actually doing what our client anticipated. You know, when we explain our estate planning, we explain that everyone has a vision of what they expect to have happen and have things going smoothly after they die, and the only way to do that is to sort of have this idea of, if you're up in the clouds and you're looking down, if everybody is going around and doing the things that you anticipated that they should be doing, then that's a plan that worked, and if they're not, then that's not acceptable. Well, it's important to understand that estate settlement and everything that happens is all about human activity and what people will do, so it's not a magic book. And you know, oftentimes one of the dangers is having no communications with the clients from the beneficiaries. You know, I recently wrote a page for our website that talks about it's not exactly in an estate settlement context, but an individual did a healthcare set of instructions in Florida, went into a nursing home, he had dementia, and then he had a problem with breathing, and he ended up in the hospital with a breathing tube and a feeding tube, none of which he actually wanted to have, and it wasn't until after all that had been done that they actually found his advanced directives in the file. And one of the fundamental problems was that he had not actually communicated that to the person that he had directed, or he was giving the instructions to. So his son didn't even know that it existed and what the instructions were. So, you know, communicating is extraordinarily important so that people understand what you're trying to do. A lot of the success for the estate plan has to do with attention to detail, particularly in the funding and following through with that. One of the dangers is a lack of interest and commitment to the planning. Beneficiaries are often saying, you know, I really don't want to talk about this. I don't want to think about you dying. But, you know, it's really important for everybody to have an understanding of the concerns that the client has. And, you know, a lot of times, particularly in a couple, one of the two parties to the marriage, the husband and wife or both partners, is super competent in some respect, and so when they die, there's an empty chair at the table where things are being done. And you know, I have a colleague in the network that actually talks about when he has their initial settlement conferences, he actually sets up an empty chair so everybody understands that although they're there in spirit, they're not there physically. So when there's that empty chair, there's no specialist in whatever it was that they were doing, and that's a problem. There are, of course, opportunities. Once people have done their planning and we have the long-term trust for beneficiaries, those assets are protected from creditors, and it helps the beneficiaries get a head start on their own planning. It can reduce, doing the planning certainly reduce the cost of transfer, both for fees and taxes. There's a tremendous opportunity to learn about how to do the maintenance and how to do the education program. We want to make sure that our beneficiaries actually capture the legacy and optimize their legacy that they're receiving from our clients. The strengths, of course, are a caring client, lots of advanced organization work and accomplished by the client, prearranged fee agreements, which we have, and there is a trusted relationship between us and our clients, and we want to make sure that that's built upon for the people that they care about. So those are the dangers, opportunities, and strengths. So here's the next step. First thing is to make sure that you go to the website and sign in. So again, you go to our website, you click the sign in button, and you come to the sign in, and you end up signing into our resource center. We're going to be adding things. We'd love to have comments from everybody about the kinds of things that they would like to add. Please note that there are links to the recorded nuts and bolts classes right here, so you can just click on it. It'll take you to the YouTube. If you're a helper, we want to make sure that you've actually attended, so you should download the survey, which is right here, and take the quiz and send it in to us so that we can make sure that you're part of the Step 2 program and you have the first call right. That also has an important result when our Step 2 helpers actually attend our classes, because what that means is that it results in a substantial change in what the cost of the state settlement is going to be. And so let me just show you. That's listed. Every one of our clients now signs what's called the investment summary, and this is what that looks like. This is a sort of a blank one, but it talks about what the fees are during the counseling process, during maintenance, and all that kind of stuff. What the first year, what the annual maintenance is, and then we get the settlement administration services. Most of our clients choose on death to have the fixed fee option. That's this one right here on the left. And if they do, here's what the settlement costs are. The fee arrangement with our clients is that there is a cap of 1.25% of the federal gross estate, and if there's no federal estate, then it's the Massachusetts estate for estate tax purposes on our fees. So that's a cap. It's not the actual fee. Where there is a $6,000 minimum on fees for estate settlement, but the 1.25% is a cap, meaning our fees are not going to exceed that. There is a variable fee option over here on the right. I don't think we've actually had any clients choose the variable fee option because they realize it's going to cost quite a bit more in a state settlement. But when helpers actually participate in the Step 2 program and are involved, then the cap will be reduced to 0.75% of the value of the assets at the time of death. Again, that's subject to the $6,000 minimum. So why do we do that? That's because we know that when our helpers have actually participated, they actually know what to anticipate, they know what to expect, they have a much better relationship with us, and so things can go along a lot more smoothly, and it's with a lot less work, so we can reduce the cap. Again, that is a cap. It's not necessarily the actual fee, but it certainly does reduce the cost of estate settlement, particularly when the cost of estate settlement for most planning is 2 to 3% around the country. So we think that we can do that because we've got people who understand what our process is and are prepared to get started. So go to our website, sign in as step 2 and member. Also let me just note that on that website there is a form. You should put in your name. Don't use step 2. You should put in your actual name. Give us an email. Confirm your email address. Give us any comments or questions you might have. Tell us what client you're related to. Give us your telephone number, and that'll make sure that you're registered so that you, unless we already have it, so that you're registered with us so that you'll receive notices of classes and that kind of thing, and that we'll be able to know that you actually went to the resource page. But remember, in order to make sure that you get actual credit for having attended the classes, if you're not able to attend now, you need to go to click on the class and do the attendance confirmation, send it into Alicia so that we can keep records of the fact that people actually participated in the program. Participation in our book is if people have actually been to these classes once in every 5 years, then that entitles the successors to that reduced cap on the estate settlement fee. Coming forward, we do have some projects that we're doing. We want to have what's called a helper's handbook. All of our clients have the Blue Book, which is essentially their operating manual with a Step 2 program. We're putting together a helper's handbook that can be downloaded from the website. And again, as I've said, the helpers are welcome to come to the annual client meetings. If they register with us, not this year, but probably next year, we will be providing them with a helper's handbook so that they have their own operating guide and know how things are supposed to work as well. So here again are our four goals. We wanted to make sure that you have the law firm name and the contact information. Remember that there's a process, and the process produces the results, and we want to make sure that everybody follows it. We wanted to give you an idea of the types of issues that you'll have to deal with and the kinds of things that will happen, and encourage your interest in planning participation so that things will go smoothly as our clients have asked. So here's the 911 information. If there's an emergency, here's the first thing to do. Call the law firm, locate the client's Blue Book, locate the client's Red Book, and then relax. Remember that there's a dependable process that you can follow, and we're going to help you through it. So how can we get the whole family to participate? I've just explained how we deal with the settlement fee incentive, and that's on the website. You can see the investment sheet so that you can see what people are actually paying in fees at the various different stages. The disability health care discussion is something that we're going to begin this year. There is a book by a doctor named Atul Gawande called, well, I can't remember the name right now. It will come to me, I'm sure, which we have explained, we have given to our...
Being Mortal.
Yes, thank you very much. Being Mortal. That we've given to our advisors, advisory board, and we're having a meeting with them next month to go over what they think and try to put together a program so that we can actually help people through what I call writing their story, their end-of-life story, with the help of the people that they want to give their instructions to. It's an extraordinarily important book, and I recommend everybody that is on this call or views this, they should read Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I think it's Gawende. And it's available, I know, from Amazon for download on your iPad or other kinds of readers. So again, I recommend that you do that because it's extraordinarily important for people to understand that whole issue. And then, of course, there's wealth reception planning. Again, we're going to have a class on optimizing your inheritance, and that's essentially aimed at the whole idea of helping the beneficiaries understand and plan for what life is going to be like as a beneficiary, what their role is, what they should expect, etc. Again, so how do we help people participate? The settlement fee incentive is, we've already done that. You've completed that by attending today. And the nuts and bolts for disability session is in September. I would very much encourage people to attend that. Again, that's for both helpers and clients so that they understand what the disability process is and what happens as people become disabled and towards the end of life issues. And then attend the Maximizing Your Inheritance session, which is on October 13th. All of these, by the way, are at noon on a Tuesday, like this one was. We may be changing which week it is in the month next year, but this year it's usually on the second Tuesday of the month. And so those are the dates. If you want to find out what our actual calendar is, you can go again to the website. The calendar is there. Here it is right here. For download, you can see all of the dates and times for various different events that are occurring in our year. So I wonder if there are any questions, or does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself, or you can click onto the chat and put in a question. Nancy, I see that you prefer not to share your webcam. I'm with you. I prefer not to share my webcam too. So webcams are not required for these sessions, just so that everybody understands. So are there any questions?
Hi, this is Stan. I have one. We just added a very small bank account, savings account. What should we do to get that registered? You mentioned something about not funding it, just adding it to the trust.
Well, funding is adding it to the trust. So if you're going to have bank accounts and you have two separate trusts, typically both spouses have their own separate trusts and they have their own bank accounts. Sometimes people want to have a joint bank account. We prefer that they don't, but sometimes people do. We make sure that everyone has less than the minimum for a Massachusetts simplified probate in the account.
This is a very small. It's 2,800 right now. Very small.
Okay. Well,
so what is it?
I'd recommend that you give me a call and talk to me about the purposes of the account and the best way to decide how it should be funded. That's what the first call.
Okay.
That's what the first call program's for. So feel free to give me a call.
Okay, we'll do that. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, well, hearing none, I guess we're done for the day. I want to thank everybody for attending. Again, if you have questions about this session or about anything that comes up on your mind about our clients' planning or what might happen in terms of estate settlement, any issues that come up with the education program, please feel free to call me. The clock isn't on when you're on the first call program. If we can answer your question on the telephone, we're very, very happy to do that. If it turns out it's going to be some kind of a project, we'll let you know whether we need to have a fee for it.
Thanks, Frank. Yeah. And the book that you recommended, I've already read, and you are superb attorney for recommending that book to folks for their reading. Excellent, excellent.
Okay, who's speaking?
Thank you. It's Jackie.
Oh, hi, Jackie.
You did it. Hi. Thank you, thank you.
She read it. I haven't yet. I will.
Oh, you definitely have to. It's difficult at the beginning, but it gets pretty uplifting towards the end. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate your attending today, and this will conclude our session. And feel free to call me if you have any questions later on. Thanks again.